Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is the Biden administration has attacked Russia first. And we've got a new sponsor. Satellite Phone Store. They have lots of stuff there. Satellite phones, they have solar generators, all kinds of things. Go check them out. And the promo code to help you get a discount is Prophecy. SAT123.com and promo code Prophecy. Okay. I'd never heard of this word either. Casus Belli, and that is the way you pronounce it. Casus Belli, it's an act or event that provokes or is used to justify war. An act seen as justifying or causing a war. And what we're about to see today is America or NATO has drawn first blood. In other words, if Russia wanted to attack us tonight, they could say, wait a minute, they attacked us first. And all the world would say, well, you got a point. So the U.S. and the U.K. have now officially approved long-range attacks into pre-war Russia. And I think he made some really good points here, so I might even read just all of this. Hal Turner says, how much longer can any reasonable person expect Russia to sit back and allow itself to be attacked with American, British, French, and German weaponry fired by Ukraine? I think that's a reasonable question. I've been saying the whole time that Ukraine is the bad guy, and I don't know that I can call Russia the good guy, but definitely Ukraine is the worst of the worst. He says, in the real world, if person A and B give a weapon to person C, and person C goes out and uses that weapon to commit an act of violence and gets arrested, they then ask person C, where did you get the weapon? Person C says, oh, I got it from A and B. Okay, so then at that point, there is liability, culpability for what the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, and the NATO members have done. They are accessories to the fact. If it weren't for the fact that the U.S. and NATO breached the promise made by President George Bush, the father, who promised Mikhail Gorbachev that NATO will not move 1 inch eastward toward Soviet Union, and they approved that reunification of East and West Germany, none of this trouble would be happening. We promised, I think this is really good, we promised the Soviets that we would not expand to NATO. Bill Clinton got into the U.S. presidency, and the presidential promise to the Soviets went out the window. We not only expanded NATO, okay, so who is it that's breaking promises? The answer is America is. We are. The Soviets went out the window. Not only we expanded NATO more than 1 inch eastward, we expanded it right up to Russia's border. When the U.S. or EU and NATO tried to get Ukraine to join NATO back in 2013 and 14, Ukraine's democratically elected president, Viktor Yanukovych, said thanks, but no thanks. So what did the U.S. do? Well, we should have done nothing, but we did. So the U.S. under Barack Obama, the EU and NATO fomented, financed, and facilitated the forcible, violent overthrow of Yanukovych. Oh, we wouldn't do that. Oh, yes. We do that all the time. We're a corrupt nation. That's the reason Dumitru was told to tell us God's going to destroy us. It was right then, that Russia realized the expansion of NATO was going to put American missiles in Ukrainian soil and do it by overthrowing Ukraine's president. Now, look at this. Those missiles would have a 5-minute flight time to Moscow. So, that's a real big so. Russia also pointed out that even if the Americans claimed that the missiles were conventional and defensive, that they could also be refitted with offensive and nuclear warheads. And the refit could be done while the missiles were actually still in their launcher, and no one would know the missiles had been swapped out. So what does that mean? That means that Russia could then find itself in the wrong end of nuclear bombs with a 5-minute flight time to Moscow and a 7-minute flight time to their strategic nuclear missile silos. They're not going to put up with that. Russia pointed out that no nation on Earth can defend itself against a missile with a 5-minute flight time from launch to impact. Russia pointed out that it was President John F. Kennedy who set the precedent for this when he imposed a naval blockade of Cuba because of the then Soviets. He had placed nuclear missiles in Cuba with a 5-minute flight time to Washington, D.C. Had the Soviets not agreed to remove those missiles, President Kennedy was already massing troops in Florida to invade Cuba. Russia tried, at least twice, to negotiate ironclad, legally enforceable security guarantees via diplomatic efforts in December 2021 and 22 to protect their national security from NATO expansion and more missiles. Russia is trying to do the thing right. We're the problem. And that's what he's about to say. The collective West laughed and told Russia no. So the second attempt, now, wait a minute. What do you think's really going on? Do you think that the Americans are stupid? No, they're not stupid. Do you think that they're inept? No, they're not inept. Do you think it has the wrong people in charge? No, I think it is the cabal in charge. And I think that they're doing this because God has put in their heart, both Russia and the evil Molochs that rule Russia and the ones that rule America, to destroy America. This is part of the coming destruction of America. So the collective West waited about 2 weeks, then laughed at the Russians again and told them no. Russia made clear this issue is a red line and they would not allow Ukraine to join NATO. In its efforts to keep the peace, Russia called Ukraine and told them, "You have 5 hours to agree not to join NATO." Ukraine called the U.S. and UK, both of whom said, "Ignore the Russian ultimatum." Russia waited. When the 5 hours were up, Russia waited 2 additional hours, and having heard nothing, Ukraine earlier say, "We are a sovereign country and we will do what we want." Russia said, "Oh yeah? Here, meet the Russian army." In went the Russian troops. I'm telling you, we're the bad guys. And Ukraine is even worse than us. And Russia's not a good guy, but I mean, right now, there isn't any righteousness among nations. So then the West turns around and screeches like girl men. This is an unprovoked aggression by Russia. No, it isn't, he says. It was provoked. Provoked by the expansion of NATO, provoked by the forcible overthrow of Ukraine's Russian Yankovich, provoked by the Ukrainian army shelling and mortaring Russian-speaking civilians in Luhansk and Donetsk. Russia is defending its own national security by forcibly halting this expansion of NATO, done by the forcible overthrow of Ukraine's government by the U.S. and EU. Russia is defending. Now, wait a minute. You may be saying, Stan, you're just reading from another guy's website. Yes, but being I'm a prophecy teacher, I'm going to bring you some insight that he doesn't have. And it may be that a lot of people don't have, but that's my job, is to bring you from the prophetic point of view, and I'm going to. Russia is defending itself from American missiles being on Ukrainian soil. Russia is defending the Russian-speaking populations of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, if I'm saying that right, many of whom were already being attacked by Ukraine artillery and mortars. I can't talk. In fact, Luhansk and Donetsk had already lost about 13,000 people to Ukrainian attacks before Russia stepped in to help them fight off the Ukrainians in 23 and 14. Now, this is a good point. Russia is right in what it's doing. I'll read that again. I don't like saying that. It's hard to think that Russia is more righteous than us, but in God's eyes, apparently so. Russia is right in what it's doing. If Russia gives in, NATO will simply continue to expand until all of Russia is surrounded. Then one day, NATO calls and says something like, "You have 5 minutes to surrender or we'll wipe out your country from the face of the earth and take all its riches." And at that point, it would be too late for Russia. So Russia had to take a stand. Now, they had no choice. We in the West are the aggressors here. It is we in the West who moved our NATO bases right up to Russia's border. It is we in the West aiming more and more missiles at Russia from all those bases. And it is we in the West who have been using Ukraine as a proxy army to attack Russia for our NATO benefit. All of this is because of America's sin. None of this would be happening if it weren't for America. Babylon has fallen, become the habitation of devils, the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. I say, no thanks, NATO. You don't need to expand anymore. Now, let me remind you, here's where we tie this together with prophecy. I've read this many times. But for the sake that there's one more person watching that hasn't read it, I'll leave it here. But I'll simply point out this was Dumitru. The angel Gabriel spoke to him August 3rd, 1984, saying the fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 of the countries will attack and defeat America in 1 hour. Then the angel says, I bless this country because of the Jews that are here. I have 7 million Jews here. They haven't tasted war, persecution, and blessed them. God has blessed them more than anyone else. And instead of thanking God, they started sinning and doing wickedly. Their sins, along with the Gentile sins, have reached the Holy One. God will punish them with fire. Israel doesn't recognize the Messiah because they place their trust on the power of the Jews in America. But when God will hit America, all the nations will be terrified. That's right. Okay, so try to imagine, let's say 80 to 100 full, big, large nuclear weapons take out America in 1 hour. That's probably what, we're not talking about little suitcase nukes. We're talking about the big ones that are 250 times, 300, some people say 500 times more powerful than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There is a scripture in Jeremiah 50 or 51 that says the earth is moved by the taking of Babylon. In other words, all those nuclear weapons go off and hit America. It's probably what turns the earth upside down. Isaiah 8 or 19, I believe it is. Israel doesn't recognize the Messiah. Let me skip down. God will raise up China, Japan. Right now, China would not be against Russia, but that's, again, part of the change that's coming. Japan and many of the nations, and they will defeat the Russians and push them to the gates of Paris, where they make a peace treaty, but they make the Russians their leader. With the nations as the Russians as their leader, which makes me wonder why some people are saying that Obama or Macron is the Antichrist, because right now it would look, not only that, but if you look at Ezekiel 38 and 39, it doesn't have the French coming down. It has the Russians coming down to attack Israel for Armageddon. So who's the leader of the Russians? That would be, well, now Vladimir, but I don't think he'll be leading then. Let me go on to the next one. Okay, so NATO is caught. It launched an attack against a Russian base today from inside Finland. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details here because it's rather detailed. I already covered a lot of details. The point is to tie this to prophecy. So NATO has been caught directly attacking Russia. In other words, we attacked first. Now, in this case, Russia was able to shoot it down before there was any blood drawn. But other Russians have been killed by American or NATO weaponry fired from Ukraine into Russia. We've covered that before. Ukrainian kamikaze drones based on an A-22 Foxbat aircraft were launched today from Finland and attempted to attack Russia's Olenya strategic base in Murmansk. Murmansk is where Henry Gruver saw massive amounts of ships and planes all coming out of Murmansk when the attack came to America. So it comes from Murmansk. I'm going to let you read the rest of it as I go on. So the NATO member Sweden used its Royal Air Force to set targeting coordinates for an attack upon a Russian strategic base, fed those attack coordinates into the A-22, which was refueled and took off from a NATO member country. So this is a NATO country attacking Russia. Finland, which the A-22 then launched several attack drones in Finland airspace, in Finland, a NATO country, with those drones then entering Russian airspace to carry out the attack. And the facts are thereby completely substantiated and undeniable, and the attack upon Russia failed. Good thing it failed. The militaries of Sweden and Finland participated in an attempted military attack against the Russian strategic military base in Murmansk, Russia. Period. Full stop. In other words, we're part of NATO. In this case, it's NATO specifically. And NATO wouldn't do anything without America's approval, so the Russians know that. They know that they were attacked by America. This is what the plane looks like. And let's go on to the next one. Swiss government announces it is in a pre-war phase. All departments planning accordingly. Now, what you're about to read here, I don't think is really the point. I think the real point is this could be talking about massive arrests about to start. Switzerland is preparing for something big. Military units are being tasked with practicing complete lockdown of all border areas. Wait a minute. If the Swiss are expecting to get attacked, why would they lock their borders? Why would they lock their borders? That's a bigger question. So they're talking about practicing complete lockdown of all their borders, ordered to prepare for widespread civil unrest. Wait a minute. That's not war. In a time of war, people in the nation all unite. Civil unrest is when they're not united. Civil unrest in neighboring countries requiring Swiss borders to be sealed. I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's probably the massive arrests. 400,000. It's not just in America. It's many nations around the globe about to take place. And this is the Switzerland military practicing to shut their borders so the cockroaches can't leave and can't get away. All military branches are on high alert or preparedness with intensified exercises all at once. In tiny Switzerland, you must be blind or ignorant not to recognize the uptick in military traffic. Low-altitude fighter jet flybys, numerous helicopter sightings, he continued. Reports from elsewhere in Switzerland confirm the military transport units were tasked with building up new stockpiles of various essentials in secret locations. That's not what you do in a war. That's not what you do when you're expected to be attacked. That's what you do when you're expecting to have a mass roundup. Local infantry units started to exercise complete border lockdowns from their neighbors, France, Germany, and Italy. Okay, so that tells me that France, Germany, and Italy may also be doing their own massive arrests. The secrecy and mystery surrounding these preparations are certainly intriguing. If we're preparing for war, there wouldn't necessarily be secrecy. But if we're preparing to arrest a bunch of bad guys in Switzerland, maybe France, Germany, and Italy too, that would be a reason to shut the borders and keep it secret until the button is pushed. According to an intelligence source, all Swiss military units were given vague scenarios. Why vague? To prepare for, and there was no explanation of how such situation might occur or what could trigger it. War and large-scale civil unrest would unfold in Europe, which would make it necessary for Switzerland to close off all its entries and even shoot at civilians. Shoot at civilians? That's not a war. Why would civilians try to get into Switzerland? In other words, the people in Switzerland that are the bad guys trying to get out of Switzerland. The people in France, Germany, and Italy are trying to get out of France, Germany, and Italy. That's what it sounds like to me. Okay, so now, how does Israel fit in with all of this? Well, it doesn't sound to me like Israel does. Yeah, well, you got to be a prophecy student to understand this. Now, let me refresh your memory. I know you've heard this many times if you follow Prophecy Club. This was 2002, and Leslie was told Arafat had gone to the hospital. About 2 years later, it was fulfilled, confirming this prophecy. She is told that Israel will give the Palestinians a state. Well, that's the big bugaboo right now, because most of the world is calling for a two-state solution. She was told that they will give the Palestinians a state, but it would be a temporary move to allow Israel to strengthen the military, and then oil will be discovered. Of course, that's going to help Israel to build their military, and that makes the oil willing. The oil makes Jews willing to fight for the land. Then Israel, America will go against most of the Arab world. I do not think that's Armageddon. I think that is a war giving Israel back their land from the Euphrates to the Nile. Now let's tie this together. We've also talked about this, 2006. She was given 7 headlines, actually 6 headlines, and the 7th one's not a headline. But Omar ushers in Palestinian state. We were watching intently for it to happen in 2024, but it didn't. But right now, the articles I'm about to show you that this war in Israel is not ready to end. Anyway, during the 49 days of the counting of Omer in 25, is probably when we're going to see the Palestinian state. And that fits in with all this. In other words, there's a perfect storm. There's a lot of things hitting at all about the same time. Omar ushers in Palestinian state. Now, I've talked about the rest. I'll move on. Full-scale war plan is submitted. This is Israel. Yesterday, the Israeli Defense, or the IDF, presented extensive preparations for a full-scale war against Hezbollah. Wait a minute. Israel's ready to attack? Because you would think that right now Israel would be trying to end the war, and they're not trying to end the war. Why? Because they have a plan. It says full-scale war, based on U.S. military assessment of the plan, is absolutely will spark a major regional war throughout the Middle East. And Israel is going to emerge the great victor. But as I see it, I think that this is going to be a temporary war. And then after that, they give the Palestinians a state. Then Israel builds up their military. And then that's when they get back all of the land. In other words, all of this is not going to give them much land back. All right. Russia now has Casus Belli. Let's do the overview here. So Russia now has the excuse or a reason to attack America. What about Israel? So this year, that's right, still this year, they say they're going to start animal sacrifice. Why is that important? And then a Palestinian two-state solution could be, and it's not a two-state solution, it's a two-state catastrophe. And then that means when they start animal sacrifices, Antichrist is soon to appear. The death of the dollar. So all of these things, war with Russia, problems with Israel, Antichrist pop up, death of the dollar, a lot of things about to hit. BRICS confirms 159 participants will adopt a new global payment system isolating the U.S. dollar, and they are suspecting, this article says, that it'll be happening at the 2024 summit. The eyes are on when that launch will take place. Many have surmised that would be announced at the highly anticipated 2024 summit, as in October. The payment system is crucial to the bloc's ongoing de-dollarization efforts. It will provide participating countries with an avenue to trade in local currencies. Therefore, it will greatly enhance how these nations settle trade, ultimately decreasing international necessity for the U.S. greenback. In other words, death of the dollar. So this is why exodus from the dollar, and this goes through and tells you that America is stupid, unprofessional. They simply can't get out of the rut. They've made a big no. First of all, America's not calling the shots. I don't think the Federal Reserve is calling shots. It's the Moloch and Baal worshippers that call the shots for the world. If you look at Luke 16:8, look at what it says. The children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. What's that saying? It's saying that the Dems are smarter than Republicans. True. It's saying evil is smarter than righteous. True. It's saying that Russia is smarter than the West. And right now, that's true. So what's really going on? Moloch has been given permission through the eyes of God that sees that America has just reached a point of no return. All of this is a destruction that God is bringing on America. That's what's really going on here. If you don't want to lose your life's savings, if you have an IRA or a 401k, the thing to do is call 800-200-GOLD. 800-200-GOLD. These folks are Christians, and they specialize in helping people not lose their life savings in the event of a stock market crash and things like that. Look, most of the 401ks, most of the IRAs are in paper, backed by paper, and as Lindsey Williams says, if it's in paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. You can lose it all. 1-800-200-GOLD. 800-200-GOLD. Hey, give them a call. Doesn't hurt, doesn't cost you anything. See if they can give you some good advice. In 2021, I started making bread. And long story short is I believe God showed me that wheat is God's famine food, just like it was famine food back in the 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, days of Pharaoh and Joseph. And I believe that that's what God has planned to feed his people. And you get it by going to josephskitchen.com. 3 steps. First, you want to get a machine package. Second, you want to order 6 ingredients and watch some videos, download the recipes to be able to make the bread. josephskitchen.com. Most of your long-time storage food, emergency food, all of that, typically are talking $9,000, $10,000 to feed one person for a year. Joseph Kitchen can show you how to do it for around $1,000 a person, and your kids will actually eat it, and it's actually good for you. Here's some bread that I made. In my case, I lost weight, lowered my blood pressure, gives me more energy. I eat a morning, slice in the morning, slice in the afternoon, always a slice before I go play racquetball. Go check it out, josephskitchen.com. When the suitcase nukes, I didn't say if, I said when the suitcase nukes go off, if you want your car to start, if you want your computers and your refrigerators and things like that, anything with a computer chip to work, you want to have one of these from EMPShield.com. EMPShield.com. And they have videos up there. It takes about 10 minutes to put on. It's not complicated at all. And if you use the word prophecy, promo code prophecy, you get a $50 discount, and it helps your prophecy club.